Lesson 6, Unit 2, Organizational Risk Management. This unit will present the concept of risk management at the organizational level and how it influences the strategies to deal with project risks. Organizational risk management, also known as enterprise risk management, is the proactive practice of identifying, managing, monitoring, and communicating internal and external risks across the organization. All organizations face risk in their efforts to deliver benefits through its projects and programs. Risks that can have an impact in the achievement of the organization's strategies and objectives. Organizational risk management is applied across the organization at every level and unit, taking an organizational level portfolio view of risks. Organizational risk management is a critical component of organizational project management, as it enables management to effectively deal with risks and enhance the capacity of the organizations to deliver value. The focus of organizational risk management is to define a standard risk management framework that will be used by all projects, programs, and portfolios to identify, manage, monitor, and communicate risks. It also defines the amount of risk that the organization is willing to seek or accept in the pursuit of its long-term objectives. Organizational risk management is a responsibility of senior management, and their goal is to determine how much risk is willing to accept as it strives to achieve growth and stakeholder value. In organizational risk management, risk is defined as the likelihood and impact of an event that will negatively affect the organization's ability to achieve its objectives. For a risk to occur, there must exist three conditions: a threat, an asset, and a vulnerability. A threat is an event or situation that can cause harm. Assets are organizational resources, human and financial, and vulnerability is a weakness or lack of measures to deal with a threat. In organizational risk management, senior management team develops the general risk management strategies that the organization would follow. The team will conduct a risk analysis to identify risk at the organizational levels. These include the financial, strategic, operational, and legal risks that can affect the organization. Senior management team will develop and prepare the risk strategies, which include the levels of risk the organization is willing to accept. Risk analysis helps determine when a project should consider one risk response strategy versus another. The typical response options are avoid, reduce, share, and accept the risk. The levels that an organization defines depend in many cases on the organization's culture for risk. The avoid risk is a risk response strategy for those risks that have been identified with a high probability and a high impact. This is a situation where the best action is to avoid the event that will lead to the risk by either changing plans or approach. For example, if there is a high chance that heavy rains will occur near the project construction site, then the project manager needs to avoid the risk by changing the schedule and moving the dates. When the probability and impact of a risk is medium, the response is to reduce the risk. This is done by preparing actions that can help reduce the impact of the risk. For example, there is the risk that a key supplier may not be able to deliver the construction material on time. The project manager can mitigate the impact by adding some buffer time in the schedule or by contacting another supplier. Another strategy that can be used when the levels of probability and impact are medium is to share the risk. This basically means to transfer the burden of the risk to a third party. For example, there's the risk that your team may not have the required skills to operate an expensive construction equipment. The project manager can contract a company who can operate the equipment and take on the risk if there are any problems with the equipment. Accept the risk. This strategy is when the level of probability and impact is low and the cost to mitigate the risk is higher than the cost of the risk event. For example, there is a low risk that the project manager may not find enough support personnel for the project. The project manager can develop a contingency plan and accept the low risk. When defining a risk framework, the organization will define the risk appetite, or the level of how much risk the organization is willing to accept. The risk appetite level sets the tone for all projects, programs, and portfolios in the organization. When a project identifies a risk, it should use the boundaries set by the organization to select the risk response strategies. In this chart, the dark line separates the levels where an organization will accept or respond to a risk. For example, when an organization has a high risk appetite, it will be more open to take on more risk. The red band on the risk map will be narrow. That means the organization is willing to gamble more on the probability that risk may occur or not. Projects, programs, and portfolios are given more latitude on how to respond to high-level risk. When the organization has a very low risk appetite, they will try to avoid more risk. The risk map will show a wider red band on the top. That means that the organization is not willing to gamble on the probability that that risk may or may not occur. Projects, programs, and portfolios are given less latitude on how to respond to high-level risks. For example, the risk analysis in a project has produced the following risk matrix. In an organization with a high risk appetite, the risk identified in levels 20 to 25 will be required to use the risk strategy to avoid the risk. This means the organization is willing to take on more risks. In this example, there is only one risk market with rate that requires immediate action. It also means there is less need to use the project budget to avoid more risk, but the project will face a high level of uncertainty regarding the remaining risks. If the organization has a low risk appetite, the risk levels 10 to 25 will be required to use the risk strategy of avoiding. That means the organization is not willing to take on many risks. In the example, the project now has 5 risks marking rate that require immediate attention. That means the project will need to use more budget to avoid those risks. But the project will have a low level of uncertainty regarding the remaining risks. How an organization approaches risks will have significant implications for projects and programs. The cost and effort associated to manage risks can increase or decrease depending on the levels of risk appetites of the organization. Organizational risk management defines a risk culture that includes the values, beliefs, knowledge, attitudes, and understanding about how risks are managed in the organization. Organizational risk management is a proactive and efficient approach to manage risk across the organization. Rather than depending on managing risk at the project level, organizational risk management seeks to standardize a common approach for identifying, managing, monitoring, and communicating risk across the organization. This ensures that projects, programs, and portfolios have a sound framework that facilitates the harmonization, synchronization, and rationalization of risk management.